You are live now. Awesome. The wonderful technology that we've got is so interesting to be in the field and working with technology at the same time. So I want to just say hi to everyone and check to see if we're on. We've just had some challenges again with technology. And yes. I'm
Hooray!
on, we're on. So, welcome everyone. This is the season of the Wise series that I wanted to do just in June. I actually used to do a process called Wisdom Wednesday, and I'd have people on, and it just sort of decided to fade. And so rather than have a regular thing on, I wanted June just to be this potent time halfway through 2025 where I was sharing the wisdom of beautiful women that I know that have got, powerful stories of transformation, move through catalytic moments, and come through the other side that are really here to give depth and meaning to the world. And I wanted to share that on our beautiful, magical women circle here, like on Awakening Magical Women. And so I want to introduce the beautiful Donna Raymond. So
Hi.
Donna and I have known each other for um oh my gosh,
19 years. Yeah.
19 years.
Yeah.
19 years. And I have a moment I'll share. I remember when I first met you. So before we go any further, Donna, you've got such a powerful story and you're such a potent woman. Can you just share with everyone, introduce yourself, who you are and what you're about, like give us a little bit of a rough idea to set the scene as we delve into this beautiful hour together.
Sure. Before I say anything, I'd just like to invite this space to drop into your body, taking a deep breath. And I would like to honor and acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the songline and the dreaming track. So that's the Bulwai Jabberkai people here where I am in Kuranda. I would like to honor and acknowledge my ancestors and your ancestors as we bring this wisdom into this space. So
And I'll just
thanks.
share that's
Yeah.
Darawal here, Darawal
Darawal,
tribe here. Yeah.
beautiful. So thank you for having me. My name is Donna Raymond. I am a great many things. First and foremost, I am an artist, a creatrix, an alchemist. Many people call me the local witch in Kuranda, which I think is really funny. I'm a human being and I move through life in a way that is constantly looking for magic and opportunities to create more meaning in my life and to move in such a way that my lived experiences help the generations that are to walk behind me. So I am an intergenerational thinker. So I'm a visionary that I see things that don't exist yet. I bring them through my being, through my creative energy. And I also refine it in such a way that I want to leave a legacy of beauty, hope, wonder, magic, connection, being really real and grounded as we walk through this life, because I believe that everyone has a story and we all have wisdom to share. We all have incredible skills and abilities and creativity. And I find that part of my role and my purpose in this lifetime is to help bring that out of people in a really fun and playful way so that we can align to being the best versions of ourselves. I created an online wisdom school, and that was under the brand of Wise Woman. So I worked with a lot of energy for the womb. I'm a sacral authority, manifesting generator, master number, all these, amazing epic things on the spiritual dimensions. But I like to ground that in a really practical way. So I have been an educator through lived experience. I teach from my own embodied wisdom. So it's not intellectualized. I've lived it, I've integrated it, which is a big key for, spiritual expression or just living in alignment and truth. And I share that from a place of clarity. And yes, I created an online wisdom school, which I closed the doors for that. I think it was last year or the year before. Timelines are a little bit of a blur for me because I've been going through a massive shift. And I've just been focusing on working one-on-one and creating powerful experiences. So I like to create experiences which blow people's minds, but also like give them pieces of themselves back. So I believe empowerment is not just a guide telling you what to do, it's like showing you different pathways, and then you get to choose your own adventure, and then you get to learn those skills and wisdom and move through life in that way. So I'm also a published author. I've published 2 books. I've got more coming through me, and I just feel like I'm just me. I like I know like people that I journey with, they're like, whoa, you've done all these amazing things, and how do you do it? And you've got, 4 kids. And I'm like, I just can't not do what I do. And I'm just here to serve and show up as real and genuine and as authentic as I can, to give permission and inspiration for others to do the same. So that's me in a nutshell.
And that's a beautiful way to move into what we're going to talk about, because we're here to be authentic, right? We're here to express ourselves. We're here to really understand what that authenticity is for us, and we're all unique. We've all got our own journey. Um, and, talking about being a generator, like that energy, if it's coming through and you're not using it and accessing it and expressing it, then it becomes stagnant, and, which is, um, unfortunately what a lot of people do, is they stay in the system, they stay stuck, they stay in the small self instead of allowing that big expression to come through, because we've all got that big expression. And it comes through softer in some people and gentler in some people and powerful and potent in some people,
Totally.
so it expresses itself in all different ways. And so, I absolutely love, I'll share. I remember when I first met you, uh, I was in a little group. I've shared this a couple of times, and I share I don't know if you've ever heard me say this, Donna, but I was doing 7 years of past life regression training. So that's how I've defined it now, to really recognize that for 7 years I was in a small container, really getting to know myself and understand myself and stripping layers. And through that little group, lots of crazy stuff happened. And I birthed myself out of that group, basically. Um, and while I was in that group, we were going to create this website. And so this woman met this beautiful man called Blake. And next thing we know, Blake has this new girlfriend called Donna. And I remember meeting you the first time and just seeing your light straight away. I really knew that you just held your own, regardless of who was in the room or where you were just in that real strength. You were still quite young, and this is pre-children. And yeah, very much in that modern maiden energy when I think about it,
Yeah.
like in that real energy of fresh, alive, virgin, like you still had all of that beauty in you, and you still do, like just I'm having that moment of remembering when I saw you the first time as well. Um, so tell us a little bit about the birthing of yourself, like the birthing of, these books, and, you do a lot of womb energy, healing and work. where did it all really start for you? When did that all start percolating and coming through?
I would say when I was around 10,
Yeah.
I had a really full-on existential crisis. I was massive. And I've always been a deep thinker. Like I'm an anoretic 29-degree Scorpio sun and Pisces moon. So it's like that there's always been depth for me. And I always felt that I was different and that I didn't fit in. And yeah, when I was around 10, I had this really intense time where like things were closing in. And I can look at that, in my wise self from a trauma lens of things that was happening in my family at the time. But I think for the most part, I just kept asking questions and I didn't understand what the purpose of life was. Is it as soon as you're born, you start dying? Like, so I didn't have the context of like life was for living, but it was like this doesn't make sense to me.
What are
Why
we
are
all
we
here
here?
doing?
Like, and I was tiny and I was 10, and then I had a lot of fear come up about death. And I remember reaching out to my dad, and yeah, my father was quite the atheist, pragmatic man, very practical, and he held me and he gave me a sense of reassurance. But even I felt like, oh, you don't even know. So I started to question my role and my place. And I think in that moment, something shifted in me to embody this sense of eldership. And that it was like I was going to become my own ancestor and my own elder because the people I looked to didn't have what I needed for guidance. Like it just didn't resonate. And so I just began to move through life. I'm highly sensitive. I've been able to see energy since I was little. So and also, through trauma, hypervigilance, so I could map and I could see and read people in a way that helped to cultivate my intuition very strongly. But then obviously I went through years of questioning that, as you do, and you still go through lessons of questioning where this knowing comes from. And that knowing for me has been a body experience. So, going back to the human design, which I kind of found in my 20s, that sacral authority, like that's my zone of mastery is through the sacral energy, through the womb.
Mine too.
I used to just get ideas. So I'm a formally trained artist. I was always creating music. Things come through me. I would hear songs or I would receive visions and then I'd need to anchor them. And then I went through a journey of being overwhelmed with the responsibility that I felt for that as a channel because I'm like, I'm only one person. Like, and then I decided to just dance with the muse as the energy would come through and go, okay, well, if I don't have capacity to write it, to anchor it, to birth it, I just trusted that the energy would move to another channel and that it wasn't always up to me. And that way I was able to separate this burden of creativity and that it became a gift and I could dance with it. So it was life was singing and moving through me and with me and creating with me rather than me feeling like I had to open up to it and it was only coming through my channel. So that was really a liberating experience to just connect when it wanted to come through and to lean in and to listen and to attune my senses. So
How old were you when you recognized that and realized? Because
uh
that's a big shift in itself, isn't it? Like
yeah.
because the burden can be something that's lifelong until you make that realization,
Yeah, and
like,
that's why people
oh,
have creative
yeah,
blocks or whatever, because you think
yeah,
it's just coming from you, but it's not. So
mm,
it's bigger
mm.
than that. I'd probably say mid-teens. And then I went on a journey of mastery. My life has been a journey of mastery, and I am the type of person that likes to throw myself in the deep end of things and like learn through really intense experiences and come out the other side to transform pain into purpose or to lean in and to listen and to get really curious. I'm a really curious person. I like to map things and make sense and to be able to share that with others. So when I became a mother, so the transition from maiden to mother was huge for me. It was about claiming my autonomy as a woman and to separate from the influence that my mother and my sister had on my life and these people that I'd handed authority over to. So it was about claiming that for myself and making my own decisions and feeling into the consequences of all those decisions. And that was a really pivotal moment for me. And then when during that journey of motherhood, my creative channels completely opened. And then the listening and the womb started speaking to me. And this is before womb work was a thing. Like there weren't anyone online. There was no books that I knew of. I was just like sitting in the rainforest and just like having these experiences and hearing. It's like the grandmothers were speaking to me. And I was like, where is this coming from? And then I am an ideas person. I'm very innovative. And so I'd be like, oh, this is a cool idea. Like, I'll just create a workshop or something. And so I got my friends to be my guinea pigs and just tried it out because I'm like, I've got this vision. I'm feeling that this is epic. I didn't know. I just stepped into the unknown and I was brave enough to just be with what was birthing through me, not necessarily knowing what was coming, but it felt clear. It felt beautiful. It felt like it was aligned from a good place, not a distorted place. And then when I would share that, seeing the radical transformation in people's lives, that I was like, whoa, okay, there's something in this. I've got to lean in more. And that was the start of it. So that was, yeah, what, 15 plus years ago that this was all happening. And then the journey just became refining and mastering. Being a facilitator or an edge walker is what I like to say because I have the ability to walk between worlds. And some people call, that's shamanic dimensions, whatever. Yeah, I just have an ability to go way out, but also stay here. And that's a really important pivotal part for the journey, I think, of walking authentically and being able to move through these rites of passage in life in a way that creates growth and expansion, not contraction. So, yeah.
I just had a remembering that, and I don't know if you're aware of the story because we haven't had much time together. I'm now in New South Wales, and was that first circle that you did the one that you asked me to come just to support you? That first one I'm pretty sure it was your first women's circle, and you said, "Can you come and like just be, part of the process?"
I
And
think that might have been the first big workshop that I did. So that was an intensive, but the first women's circle that I did, it was a listening. So, and this is the key, right? Is like when you feel guided and things begin to align for you, you'll see, and if you have pattern recognition, it becomes a lot easier. But if you're not attuned and you're just kind of slowly coming online or waking up and really listening, things will come to you in such a way that you're
mm,
like, oh, why is this same theme happening? So around the time of the first women's circle, everyone, that's an absolute, but most women in my community were like, oh, we want to gather, but we just don't have a space. And everyone had this desire to connect. And I was like, well, why don't we do that? And then it was like there's this weird blockage. And I'm like, well, I'm a person, I've got a backyard, I've got a space. So
oh, I remember this one. Yeah.
I just put a post up on Facebook, thought nothing of it, made a
Yeah,
date loaf and a pot of chai and just left it open. And slowly but surely, just women kept coming. And I had over 50 women at my first women's circle.
I
I'd never
remember.
facilitated anything, but I have natural leadership qualities. So I'm not afraid of, holding that space. But I learned a lot. And I'm pretty sure that first one was on a lunar eclipse as well. It was really
Mm,
trippy. Like, and we didn't
mm.
know. We're like, why is the light weird? And we look up and there's like a lunar eclipse. So that's the art of listening and not being afraid to put your hand up and being courageous enough to be okay in the mess of creation because you can refine things as you go. As long as the intention is there, intention is everything, particularly in the
Yeah.
magical realms, like having that
Yes.
intention. You also allow the space for the organic creativity to move through other people because we're all in relationship. And what's activated in me, like as we're talking now, it's activating something in you, and our consciousness will like weave together to create relationship or experiences or conversations. And our human brain cannot control that. So a lot of the time we have to say yes to the opportunities, open up and be okay to step into the unknown and the magic to watch things move through. And that's like the art of alchemy, right? Is to be able to sit with the
Absolutely.
unknown and to like be okay with new forms that want to be birthed in the moment that you may not even have realized that that potential existed, because yeah, you've got to hold that space.
Well, I want to share something with you because I'm pretty sure you don't know. Um, you might have seen somewhere that I talk about following energy threads. And so I've moved it into following the white rabbit, right? Well, the first energy thread that gave me the understanding was in that workshop
Wow.
that we did. Because you took us through a walking meditation where we walked through
The
the eyes.
ancestral walk. Yeah.
Yes. So we walked through the eyes of each one of our mothers, that ancestral walk. And I have no idea about my ancestry. So I know that I was named after my mum's grandmother, and that was all I knew. Like so, and I knew that my mum thought my grandmother was, nasty and evil and blah blah blah. And so we weren't allowed to actually connect with them, right? So talking about ancestors, this is going to really tie in because when I went through that process, I saw my mum and I did the process, what we had to do. And I stepped through, and here is my grandmother. And she was sort of in and out, like, you'd see these evil eyes and then she'd blank out, right? And I'm like, what's that? And I see this, her soul above her. And when you know this, when you get one piece of information and then that's the step to open up all the
Yeah.
rest and you
The
get the
key.
flood. Yep, the key, yep. So all of a sudden I get that grandma was never in her body, that she'd had a horrific birth and she was never in her body. So she had entities in her body. And that's why mum had been growing up and she was evil, right? So I'll go through her and see the mother, the woman I was named after, staunch, strong, and I'm like, that's where I get my strength from, right? Anyway, I get through. I must have been like four women, and here's a woman. So you see the person coming in from the boat, and here's the woman baking bread. Like, oh, I'm just baking bread, I'm just baking bread. But she's saying this because she's actually, doing herbs and stuff, and no, she doesn't want anyone to know, right? But I find this Elizabeth, that Elizabeth was the one that came over. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So as soon as we finished your workshop, I raced out into the car and I rang up my mum and I said, I just had this wild experience. Before I tell you anything, can you tell me anything that you know about grandma's birth? And she said, I don't know much about it, but I do know that my grandma told me that she did have a traumatic birth with her and she didn't see her for a couple of months because her
Wow.
face was mangled.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh my God, I saw that. This is what happened, blah, blah, blah. She had entities. Well, my mum freaked out and was like, you know, that was my mother and she was evil. It wasn't entities, like trying to get, like take ownership or whatever of her, she was the one. But it made me then want to find this other Elizabeth to see the truth of it. Well, this is a thread that is still not complete. I've had one thing after the other happen through this thread. Like, um, um, I met a guy that told me this stuff about my ancestry months later, years later, or I was at the Tableland Folk Festival and watching the children's parade. And do you remember, I don't know if you know Doug, who was the elder of
Dougie. Yeah. Doug and Helen.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Dougie and Helen. So Dougie's sister. I can't think of her name, the little beautiful one with the she was short. So she was standing next to me and she didn't know me. I knew Doug really well, but she didn't know me. We're watching the children's parade and I felt someone in my energy. And I looked down and she looked up and smiled at me.
Mhm.
And she said, she waited for a moment to see if I was okay. And all of a sudden she said, "You need to find your bloodline." And I smiled at her and she said, "I know mine." And we both laughed. And she said, "But you need to know yours." And she said, "You don't have to go back over." She said, "But you need to find yours." And she said, "When you do, your healing is going to just expand, explode." Well, long story short, I won't take up much more time, but what happened was I then had someone come, a truck driver. I did energy work, right? A truck driver used to come and have energy work. And finally, I asked, "What's he doing here?" And the day that I just happened to mention to him this thread, he told me that his next door neighbor was a genealogist.
Hmm.
So I get a free, full family tree done. And here's an Elizabeth that came over in the boat.
Epic.
And so I'm looking at going next year to the UK to be, and so we're from Dorset.
Beautiful.
So it all started with your workshop.
Oh,
And yeah, and
how
so
cool is
that's the
that?
longest thread that I've been through. But this is the transition, right? This is the process of, as you said, alchemy and allowing the information to come through. It's being open to see and receive, and then transmitting it, like transmuting it, anything that needs to come through. Because this is the work that we're here to do.
Yeah. And also, like, we go through seasons of growth. So it's like, sometimes we feel like we're going around in circle, but really it's a spiral. And each time we're maturing or deepening our understanding, or we have an ability because we've done the work before to access a different dimension of the wisdom that exists in that space. So if you were doing this timeline journey and going through that, womb to tomb, like, back down the line, following the red thread or white thread or golden thread, whatever you want to call it, each time you journey, you're going to be able to access newer information. And it might be you, it wasn't relevant to your growth back then to know that information, but it is now. So it's like, and sometimes you have to earn them through initiation. And that's what I feel like my whole journey as the person that I am is I learned through initiation, and my initiations have been brutal. Like, and I
Yeah.
haven't shied away from them. I've lent in. I show up even when I'm shaking, even when I've still got 4 kids that have all the things that, responsibilities as you still show up. You can have the most epic catharsis and then still have to go and do the grocery shopping or like go and feed the dog.
And
That's
so would you mind sharing one of your initiations just to give, we've got a gamut of women on this group, some that are just beginning, some that are seasoned, like um, just to give an idea for those that are, what is an initiation and what does it look like, because I can't think of anyone that could share as well as you of how, because most people see them as, traumas, right? Like,
sure.
yeah,
And I think like trauma is not what happens to you, it's what we experience and anchor into the body that we're unable to process or that we don't have the tools. So that, lives in the body. But if you look at life as a ceremony and you look at it as art in motion, that's a key, is first to open up to a growth perspective, or nothing's finite. Life is ephemeral. And so life is for living. So if you have that perspective to go, okay, well, you can then navigate these traumas or pain or experiences and look for the wisdom that's within it. And the solution is usually within the problem, but you just need to shift and have a different perspective to look at it in a different way. And that takes an immense amount of courage, and that's cultivated over time. A lot of my initiations, yeah, they have been through really painful experiences, whether that's not honoring my own boundaries because I didn't know that I had porous boundaries, whether it was attracting a narcissist and someone with very severe mental health issues and dealing with that journey, whether it's through my business and feeling like I was alone, like no one really got it, and still having the strength to show up every day to create the work that didn't really exist yet, but that was needed 10 years down the track. And like being invested in the long game, that's the visionary realm.
Mm,
That's
mm.
a journey in and of itself. But I've found that when I feel like I'm in initiation, it's almost like a trial by fire. It's a testing. Is do you really want this? What's on the other side of it? So, okay, you say that you want uh, abundance, It's like, okay, are you prepared to walk through that? What if this takes 10, 20, 30, 40 years? Are you still prepared to show up to that? Or are you going to give up at the first sign of a struggle or a challenge? So when you see the greater theme of what it is that you're aligning to, creating, manifesting, whatever, if you see the theme that's at play, there will be almost archetypal experiences within that. And there will be other people that have journeyed before you and have handled it in different ways that you can lean on for guidance or inspiration, or I'm definitely not going to do it that way. But an initiation has three phases. So first there's the calling, a call to adventure. Or I've just got this feeling in me that I need to start a business. I've got this feeling that I need to go and walk on the beach because there's going to be someone or something there. I've just got this feeling that I need to start writing. I don't know why. I've just got this feeling that I need to quit my job and go and do this or go back and study or whatever it is. So you follow those threads of the feeling. But for me, I walk a wise path in that I've learnt to not be so gung ho and naive, where I'll listen in and I keep questioning. And I need to feel three yeses in me. And then I'm like, okay, because once I'm decisive, I'm decisive. If I don't have that activated in my body where it's a full body yes, that I'm so confident in that, then I'll lean in and I'll keep asking questions to gather more information so that I'm making a wise choice. So there's a calling. And then it takes courage to step into that calling. So, in the context for what I want to share on the initiation, that women's circle, that first one, was an initiation for me into stepping into holding the space that I do and saying yes to the leader that was already in me, saying yes to my inner wise woman. And so I was courageous. I felt, I listened, I heard the call, I responded, and then I created. And then you go through this process of liminality where you come undone, or there's challenges or obstacles that you need to meet along the way. And there will be a death. There will probably be 1,000 deaths if this is something that's really important. And you'll need to go through that death because it's important to compost all the shit down to create a fertile soul soil to build what is true and what is coming through you, that new identity. Going through an initiation creates a complete identity shift. You don't lose where you've come from or who you've been, but it doesn't define you anymore. And then you go through this stage of refinement. So you walk through it and you are a different person. That is by nature what a rite of passage or an initiation is. You are not meant to be the same version of yourself that you were before that call to adventure. It is meant to be completely rearranging. Sometimes it can be really beautiful and graceful, and you can have initiations that are, do deep healing work, and it's more about connecting in with your strength. And I speak a lot when I've been doing shadow work for years that most people are so freaked out with shadow work that it's all the negative, shameful stuff. But shadow work really is actually how freaking amazing and phenomenal and like this big energy, sensual, magical, like phenomenal person that you are, and being able to move through the shame or the cultural conditioning and the ancestral trauma that might be passed down, so that you can sit with and embody that with confidence, and then to show up in the world. That's an initiation too,
That's
through that
real.
shadow
Yeah,
work.
absolutely.
That's big work. So going through for the women's circle, having that calling, stepping into that work, what opened up after that, I had no idea, but I felt the dreaming of it. I remember when I was doing video blogs on YouTube, and they're still up there, which is really funny. So I see this younger version of myself and I go back, I'm like, oh, it's really sweet, because we're not that person. Like cellularly, we're not even the same person
Completely
anymore.
different.
But
Yeah.
I remember feeling this calling to share and disseminate wisdom that comes through me. I just know that things come through me. I'm learning as I'm speaking most of the time, and I've just learned to trust that I am a conduit for that. I transmit. I am also a catalyst for people, and to embody that with honor and responsibility, right? So I created this blog and then I shared online, but the process to actually press post was like, it took me like an hour and a half. I was like, like, and I was like dancing back and forth from the computer screen, because I knew that as soon as I pressed that button, my life was going to change. I didn't know the how. It wasn't up to me to know the how, but I felt the dreaming of it. I felt how huge it was. And I still went, okay, yep, bang, and just opened up to the possibility. I said yes to life. I said yes to my purpose dreaming through me. I said yes to being able to listen to where I was called to serve, because I believe that yes, life is for living, but it's bigger than us. And we may not even know what that is until we look back. That's like when you see art, like life as living art in the art movements, they don't know what movement they're in until a generation ahead, and they look back and they're like,
Mm,
oh, that's what you were in. And
mm,
that's where wisdom and growth comes in, when you look back and you're like, oh, that's why I went through that initiation, because I needed to embody this. I couldn't be the person I am now without going through that. And then you can find peace and acceptance, and you can actually find the blessings in the really intense experiences in life without getting stuck there. And that's the part where I think a lot of people need to share their stories more, that it is possible to move through really intense traumatic experiences and not stay stuck there, and not let the nervous system anchor into that frequency being safe, which is usually what happens. Is we create safety around familiar experiences, whether it's trauma or dysfunction. And so growing beyond that feels so scary, and we can't step out into the unknown, which is actually really healthy for us, because our nervous system has been wired and set to, like, this is what safety is. The brain, the neocortex, doesn't like that sense of change because it thinks it's dying. So you need to like have this sense of vision and being anchored to something bigger, which is coming back to that initial stage of the initiation, which is that calling. Trust that
mm,
vision. You've been given it for a reason. There's something alive in you that wants to be nurtured and grown and then birthed in the way that it needs to through you. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, I love that. And I'd love to navigate that through into, the books that you've written as well, because there's nothing like the initiation of maiden to mother, right? Like there's nothing like like that's a shift that women, even women that are still living in that unconsciousness, can tell their story of the shift and the transformation that they went through. Like it regardless of whether you're asleep or awake, is a calling that happens that you just can't stop. I remember, I think it was Carly, is like, you hear people say, I don't want to do this anymore, and you laugh, right?
Transition.
That
Yeah.
when you're in the, like, oh shit, did I really make this decision, like. So, your first book that you ever wrote was about Maiden, right? And
Yeah.
and that's your
Yeah.
beautiful book, and there's your beautiful Aurora in there.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about being an author, and but also that, what it's all about, and the shifts and the transformation that you went through and your children went through as you
Sure.
birthed that.
So these books wouldn't have been birthed if I didn't say yes to that initiation, which stepped me into women's work and womb work, right? So it's like, you got to go way back to see the seeds were planted long ago, but I didn't really know that this would be coming through. That wasn't really part of the original vision or planned. It was refined over time. I actually started writing my second book, Maiden to Mother, first. And I booked a writing retreat. So 4 kids, and I was like, no, actually, I was pregnant with Zenith, sorry. So 3 children at home, and then to have extra bonus boys on the school holidays. So there's 6 all up. But um, I booked a writing retreat so that I could just focus on that. And I just anchored 25,000 words in less than a day. I was like in the realm. And I remember as that was coming through, then I had some surges and I was like, oh, maybe baby's coming early. So I had to stop that. And then baby came and I tried to use the sneaky moments to write. But then what was happening is there were so many women in the community wanting a guide for transitioning their young girls through menarche. And I'd been educating on it and had created a beautiful ceremony and mapped a template that was just simple and special for my daughter. And I asked Aurora for permission. Could I use the photographs and some of the process in this book so that we can share it with other mothers or other women? And she was totally for it. So this was then the seed came through because I'd already started writing the other book. And I'm like, oh, this is a legacy series. This wasn't just a book. I always knew I wanted to write a book on motherhood and birth because, free birthed 3 babies at home and, became quite a walking encyclopedia, an advocate on all dimensions, and somehow keep attracting people that need advice or they come to me for mentoring. That's just naturally what I attract. I am a safe person for people to just drop the mask and just ask really real questions. And so I was like, oh, okay, this is the seeds of legacy. So then I wrote Maiden, which is a guidebook for mothers to help initiate their daughters into womanhood. And this is something that most of us missed. When we go
Mm.
back into our first bleed stories, we weren't celebrated. It was either traumatic or a non-event, or there was a lot of stress. But what happens at the moment of your initiation? So whether it's through your blood or, these moments in time through your business or these other, examples I shared before, what's happening at the time of that transition from calling, like moving through it, can shape the external parameters of that experience. So there'll be energies that come through that need to be brought into balance and homeostasis, right? So there's an integration period in that. So for most of us as young girls, connecting with our blood, it was taboo. It was disgusting. It was gross. There was no sense of power in it. There was no sense of connection from womb to womb. We didn't know that we existed inside our grandmother's womb. So we didn't know that we carried these imprint. We didn't know that there was stories through this womb lineage and these energetic threads. We didn't know that helps to shape us in our identity of who we are as women and the beliefs we have about being a woman. We didn't know that it helps to open us into the portals of pleasure and our sexuality and how we express our erotic innocence and our sensuality as a young maiden whose wombs come online for the first time. We didn't know that it's a power center that we can use to work with monthly. We didn't know that we had 4 seasons in a month cycle. Like, we didn't know all of this. And so that's what I wanted to put into this book, not only as a offering for my daughters, but for all daughters. And also a reclamation for those of us that didn't have that initiation. So we can read this book and reclaim those parts of ourselves that might need to be acknowledged and may need to be healed. Because part of the journey when we walk authentically and consciously is we reach back to those wounded parts, the discarded parts, the parts that were abandoned, neglected, and we can come from our wise, loving self now and reparent ourselves and bring that through. So we bring that through this portal of integration so that we can be whole and present. So that came through, which was really amazing. And I didn't really promote it too much because I wasn't out to be an author. It wasn't like, they say in business, you should write a book and that builds your credibility. Like I'm not about any of that stuff. I'm not into vanity metrics. I do things because they have meaning and substance and I'm called to, not the shiny stuff on the outside.
Yeah.
So I birthed that book, but I didn't feel like an author when I birthed this, partly because it's just a simple little book. I was like, oh, pretty good. And then this one came through, and this one was a birth in and of itself, which has more research. And
Can you show the cover?
yeah, so that's I'm pregnant with Maya there. So I
Yeah.
designed all the covers. So I use my skills and my creativity to just do things. I don't wait for people to tell me what to do. I Google it or I research and I figure it out because I want to do it. So yeah, this book has been a few years in the making, and selfishly, my reasons for it was I was like, okay, I'm a mother. I have three daughters, one son. If I was to die tomorrow, what do I want to leave behind to know that for them to know that I was thinking of them and that I've got them? And what are the big rites of passage that they may walk through and that they wish that their mum was there for? And I was like, oh, this is a huge one. So I
Mm,
had to create the time to do that because what it did was it freed my creativity because there was such meaning and this deep responsibility as a matriarch to be able to give to my lineage. Yeah, I felt like I really needed to bring, like there was it wasn't a weight in a sense like it was a burden. It was just like, this is super important. I can't put it off like, oh, one day, oh, when I have more time. It was like, no, I'm going to carve the time. I'm going to create this reality, not wait for it to happen because life happens otherwise. I
yeah.
just made it happen. So I sat down with that and then I was like, what do I really want to share in this book? So it goes through the importance of maiden to mother as a rite of passage. That's not just with respects to physiological birth. Through the seasons of woman, we transition from maiden to mother. There's an archetype, so it doesn't matter if you go through the journey of being pregnant and giving birth, you still give birth to projects. It's a journey through maturity and matrescence. But from a physiological perspective, it completely changes your brain. Like adolescence changes your brain chemically, the rewiring, the neuroplasticity, all of that. And so does actually being pregnant and giving birth on a physiological function. So I wanted to speak to that, but I wanted to speak to the spiritual dimensions of how to clear your channel, why it's super important to embody the responsibility, your ability to respond to the role of motherhood. Because as a mother that's incubating new life within your womb, that child is so intrinsically connected to your nervous system that through the limbic imprinting, you are actually responsible for creating the way that that child is set up to experience love, to experience safety. That is so paramount to do the work that you need to do to be able to set that up as best you can. And if you didn't have that opportunity, you didn't know, we don't know what we don't know. You can learn from that and then connect with your children or yourself in such a way to atone or to make amends, because there's always opportunities for healing and growth. It's also important to understand what happened. So in part of the book, I go through the rotten roots of patriarchy and what happened, that how have giving
Yeah.
birth became so disempowered and
Yeah.
disconnected. And there's some
And
really
all that power that you were talking about in the womb and why that was all hidden from
totally.
us.
And
Yeah.
so having you've got to look back. So before we walk forward, we need to honor those that walked before us. And we need to
Mm.
lean into those stories cross-culturally as well, not just through your own privileged lens. You actually need to feel into the greater grid, because when a woman's pregnant, she is a dimensional bridge. And through the birth portal, you are able to access that dimension of all birthing mothers that existed before you and in that moment as well, and all birthing mothers from, so on and so forth. So there's such power in that space. And if you can navigate it and navigate birth through the lens of initiation, it gives you the courage to move through it as consciously and as empowered as possible, where the pain doesn't contract you, it expands you into a greater vision of yourself. And then you move through the transition of understanding the maiden, her energy, grieving her. You need to let go of the maiden to be an
Mm.
embodied mother. Women that don't and have an unintegrated mother tend to be quite reckless in their relationships or in their life because they've got this wild energy that's ungrounded. And through the process of maturation, through matrescence, and also through this initiation into an embodied state of motherhood, both of those archetypes cannot exist at the same time. You need to integrate them. The maiden needs to bow down at the foot of the mother so that she can move forward. That's not to say that you're not allowed to be free and wild. You can still harness and tap in and call on her when you need to, but she's not running the show because she can't handle the
The
experiences of
responsibility
motherhood.
and stuff that's going on. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's what a lot of this book was. And it was giving my lived experience, my pains. Uh, I talk about mental health stuff in there, which I think is missing in a lot of mother books. Like I read a lot of, pregnancy, and they focused on the birth and preparing, and there's some spirituality in it. And it's like, but then what happens? It doesn't show you like, oh, how do you deal with like when you're touched out or your nervous system is so fried and you become a walking zombie for a while, or you feel like you're in this transition stage through the initiation that you don't know who you are and you're afraid that you've sacrificed yourself or you've lost yourself. What do you do if you don't have support around you? Because we're fed this vision and ideal of these huggies commercials of what motherhood is meant to be, and motherhood will completely strip you bare so that you
Mm,
can create a new version of how you want to mother and who you are as a wise woman. And that can be grappling if it doesn't meet the expectations of the highlight reel of other people or what you've been sold and marketed to, because, marketing exists for the most part in those realms to make you feel less than so that you buy more products, or, you know what I mean? Like you're constantly chasing rather than sitting with your truth of who you are and being and owning that and walking and refining your lifestyle and attuning to your children's needs so that you're creating this dance and relationship together. So it's big. It was when this came through, and I remember writing the last words. There was this moment where I was like,
completion.
it felt like she was singing on her own. Because sometimes with creativity, you want to keep putting more embellish, and you have to know when that's good. It's
Mm,
that it can live on its own now. And yeah, it's amazing getting the feedback for it, not only for new mothers, but mothers that have older children as well, and just learning. And the same intention for the first book is you can read this still having older children and still reclaim parts of yourself or begin to think back to your experience where you didn't have this wisdom and you didn't have this guidance. And yeah, I think part of my journey in life is I've always looked to my inner wise woman. So I like dream up the most highest potential of my lived experience in this lifetime. And that's constantly evolving. So I've got to keep checking in with her because as I grow and evolve, that vision shifts and change that timeline. And so I sit with her and she's like this really cool, twinkly, like just she knows some stuff, but she's funny as fuck. And I love her. And she's
yeah,
just like, she's cool. And I connect with her in moments where I feel isolated or alone. And so I go, okay, if you are the ultimate embodiment of who I am, then you already know the decisions I need to make. So help guide me. Where do I need to go to get to you if you are already in the embodiment on this timeline? And she helps me adjust my sails. She helps give me permission to be bold or to be courageous to go, actually, that's not for me. I need to rest. I need to burn it all down. I don't know why, but I'm like, alchemizing everything and I need to recreate things, even if it was apparently super successful. If it's not in alignment, it's not in alignment, and just trusting
absolutely.
her to guide me forward, which is, she was with me writing these books as well. And yeah, that's kind of how I work, how I tap into that creative field. And I am a creative being. I can't not create if I don't. If I'm feeling frustrated and a bit snarky, I know that I'm not using my gifts and my talents in the way that need to be shared, because when I share them, I'm regenerated. I feel such an amazing life force. It doesn't deplete me when I'm in alignment. So that's usually a telltale sign that I'm in a bit of a funk. Woe is me, and I need to shake it off and go and do
Yeah.
something about it.
Yeah, yeah. And as you were talking, the beautiful thing about going through those books, even if you haven't had children, or it's been a while since you were a maiden or whatever, we have the ability to tap into the now moment, which is, like you can read that. I was imagining reading that book, and tapping into that child that went through the process of, moving into, being a woman, and all the things, it's being a mother for me was what really started my initiation into spiritual, moving into the realms, because I woke the fuck up.
Yeah.
And I got it, like now I'm responsible, and I got to stop this grieving that I'm doing for 10 years, and really start owning my authority here. So it's a beautiful transition with all its bumps and rawness and all the
The gift that
processes.
keeps on giving.
Yeah, that's right. So, Donna, how do people get in contact with you and get the books? And I mean, we'll put some links down below.
Yeah, yeah. So my website is donnaraymond.com.au. You can find me across most of the social media channels. I haven't been too active on the social media front because I was navigating some pretty intense stuff. My ex-husband decided he needed to leave this world, and I was unfortunately the one that found him. So, like, I've been integrating and holding space for our daughter and the collateral damage and the aftermath of that. So I've had to be kind to myself. As much as I want to do all these things, I was just like, we're coming up to the year anniversary at the moment. So
Oh,
I'm
wow.
still I'm still there. I'm still online. I'm just not, active in that mentory kind of businessy space at the moment. I'm stronger and healing still. It's a
Mm.
process. You never really
Yeah,
healed, I
yeah.
don't
I
think.
didn't
It's a
realize it's been a year already.
Yeah,
Yeah.
coming up in July. So, and I've got a 11-year-old who's going to be 12 this year to help. She's still in a bit of a tender, wobbly space. So she's been my priority. So there's the website there, social media channels. I prefer Facebook because I like to write and I like the content. Maybe I'm just an old dinosaur that likes Facebook rather than, I've
Yeah,
been
I
trying to
know.
give TikTok a go and videos, and I'm
I
kind of
know,
like
me too.
I've been in this cocoon. And so for those of you who might know, like, you go through these transitions or identity shifts, or you're alchemizing yourself, or you're going through an ego death, and then you go into the metamorphosis, and you're this cosmic soup, and you don't know who you are, where you are, what you're doing, what your purpose is, and you're questioning and you're redefining, and then you get some substance, and then you like poke your head up,
Yeah, I know.
come out.
Yeah. Anyone here?
So like, and then you get to that point where you spread your wings, and so I'm like in that, I'm still this like playful but just mindful, because I know more about my nervous system now. I've journeyed through PTSD before and healed from that, and I understand more of capacity now, which I didn't before. So that was an initiation through me through a car accident, and then this last year, so having really intense traumas, and then learning more about my capacity, because my capacity is not about who I am as a person. It's working with where I'm at in the season that I'm
Mm,
at, and being sensitive and kind and compassionate to that version of myself, rather than putting pressure and responsibilities, because the capacity is not there. So the capacity doesn't define your worth or your creative potential or what you can do. And you can adjust that to just walk through life with a bit of grace and still create space for wonder, and playfulness is a big part of that. So yeah, connect with me online. The links to the books are on my website, otherwise Amazon or other online bookstores. And yeah, in So probably in July, I will order another print run, and I'm going to do a small book launch in Cairns, just simple, like nothing super big. Just come have a cup of tea. I might read a chapter out of it. And yeah, I will be stepping back into the mentoring. As I said, I've taken some time off, but one thing that I really love, and I seem to attract mainly women that come to me with a big vision and they're in this transition stage. So I'm the type of person that through my mentoring journeys, when I walk with you, I walk with you. And they say that you can only hold space or go as deep as someone's, they can
Willing to
hold that
go.
space. And I've gone to some pretty deep spaces. So normally when people say yes to working with me, there's radical change coming because of what I can hold. And it hasn't taken me a while, but I think it's just sitting with, oh, I actually do that for people, and I can speak that confidently. Like, this is what you get when you work for me. There is depth here. My what I hold, my mission and vision is to help people awaken to what is living through them, their creativity, to trust it, to share it in the world in such a way that it creates meaning, and to redefine what success means. I think there's a lot of people, particularly on the entrepreneurial space or just even in healing and self-development, that success looks like this particular thing. It's normally with a financial gain or status or something. And I'm like, let's go back to a more holistic way, and let's redefine that towards success being fulfillment, where you can walk
Mm.
through life feeling content and feeling fulfilled, knowing that you're creating a legacy that lives beyond you, that your energy is flowing through you into the world in such a beautiful way that the ripples that it creates is creating phenomenal change. I had a interview last week or the week before with Tennille on her podcast, and I spoke about critical mass. And so I just want to share this quickly, because critical mass theory says that if you have a population that you need to inoculate, so let's talk about, we want to help people be more empathic and creative, and come into connection and kinship and collaboration and community and regeneration, so more of a holistic version of being, which our ancestors and indigenous people have always done. We want to come into that. We need to change what we are faced with now in modern society, this disconnect. Then to reach critical mass, you only need to inoculate the culture to 10%,
I was going to
right?
say it's so small, right?
So then we
Like
go,
it's
oh, I am one person, but like when I step up and I do my things and I hold true. Don't get swept up in your magnetic north or what people are doing over here because it's cool. Hold true to who you are. Walk with integrity. Integrity is knowing that when no one's watching, you're still doing the right thing and you're following that
mm,
clear path, that you don't need to have someone validate you for being a good person or whatever. It just becomes a part of you. You know the clear way, the decisions you need to make, you know the energy that you need to invest. You're also compassionate when you take the scenic route a bit, or you're like, oh, like that's not who I
yeah,
am.
I'm
Come
having
back,
a major
call
wobble.
yourself back from your wobbles and dust yourself off and get back to work. um, so when we come back into alignment, when we live in that energy, that vitality, we focus on our vitality and our strength and share our gifts, it awakens things in other people. It shakes up their stuff as well, and it begins to refine your circle, and the frequency and the energy um, builds, and we move and we live through each other, and we're inspiring each other just by holding true to ourselves. That's how we reach critical mass. 10% is all we need, and the rest is a ripple effect. And I believe that we will see this in my lifetime. I'm hoping to live to
I
be really
know.
old biddy. So
I know. It's really beautiful, isn't it? Because it wasn't something I was like way back. I didn't think I knew that I was here for that, but I didn't think I was going to see it. But now I'm actually recognizing that I am going to see it. And it's so exciting because like what a fulfillment, because we've like now I'm talking to you and forgetting that we've got the the people watching, but you and I and many others have been through many lives to get us to this place. This is not our first run
yeah.
to support us in this earth moving into that fifth dimension. And so um we get to be at the party and not just do the preparation, which is so cool, like in this body in this time. So I'm really, really looking forward to it myself. So Donna, I would just want to share, like it's been like living in New South Wales as a new experience for me, right? Like I lived up in Cairns and Far North Queensland for 16 years, and that's my spiritual home, and all my spiritual, sisters are up there. And I had to move to New South Wales. I had the calling, Remember that beautiful rainforest house I was living
I
in
love that
Atherton?
place with
I
the
know.
spa and stuff out the back, the
Yeah,
retreat space.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I remember like, you're moving. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm
No, I'm
like,
not gonna
not
dig my heels in.
yeah, yeah.
Spirit's
My
like,
kids
oh
had,
yeah, you
yeah,
are.
yeah. My kids had moved, and it was the first time I didn't have to look after anyone.
That's a huge
And
initiation too.
yeah. Yeah. So it was 6 months before I finally spoke to anyone and said, I think I'm moving because yeah, chucked a tantrum and said, no, I'm not doing it. And then, all those, like for it to move to Sydney and look after my mother, like, oh my gosh, from the rainforest to the suburbs of Sydney was such a shift and a breakdown and all the things that came through that. But being in New South Wales is such a different frequency. And I've just loved our conversation because tapping back into the sisterhood, that I spent so many years in. And a lot of the language, you're able to detail the things that I naturally grow through, as a spiritual woman, and to be able to language it in the precision that you do is so magical and so beautiful. And I just want to honor you for that. Like as you're talking, I'm like, yeah, that's what I do, But you just do it naturally and you don't think about it. And so, you're a natural um what do you call it? A word. Um,
Wordsmith.
yes, you're a natural wordsmith, like, and I really appreciate that about you. We just always go into depths when we talk. We've seen each other's journeys, so like and births and all the things that have gone through, and I just really appreciate you for the magic that you are. And
Oh,
I'm so appreciative of being able to share that with my little community here. For anyone that's watching and took the time to come all the way through to the end, I appreciate it. Because these weren't just little conversations, um, and I really love that about our connection. It's been a while since we've chatted, but every time we do, it's the same with all my other
so
sisters up there. Yep, just straight back in, which is
yeah.
so beautiful. So thank you so much, and thank you for everyone watching. And yeah, jump in. I'm going to grab your books too. I actually haven't got Maiden yet myself.
Yeah.
I was going to, so it's a good reminder to go in and get them. So I'll go in and check out your website and much appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And also you, Liz, for like what you've created and seeing. I'm pretty sure when we first met was your birthday at Tinaroo. And
Yes.
to from there to now to like witness your growth and to be part of it for a while, like, when we were connecting a lot, I come and sleep over and like all those journeys and the copious amounts of tea and like and just to watch your growth and blossoming and the changing of your seasons and watching your children grow and the dogs and the cats. It's like, like
Yeah.
to be a
Yeah.
part of your world has been really beautiful, and to see what you're creating now is so magical. And I want to honor and acknowledge those that are listening or watching on the replay, because your energy is weaving into this space as well. And I want to encourage to have more meaningful or deep conversations with people around you and see what comes through and trust the magic that flows through you. So thank you.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for watching.